I want to share with you an exchange that I had with the Hegelian. And the reason I want to share this exchange with you is because it gives an opportunity to exemplify the way that modern philosophy and modern thought works. It also specifically gives a chance to manifest the irrationality and authoritarianism of Hegelianism. In an exchange that I was having with Hegelians over the question of the beginning of Hegel's philosophical logic, which has to do with what he calls a presuppositionless beginning, where he says it starts with pure being and then he equates pure being with nothingness. And I explained to these Hegelians that this irrational attempt is in fact an act of equivocation, because Hegel qualifies the concept of being with the word pure or abstract, turning it into the same thing as nothing. But he retains the word being so that he can manufacture what looks like a legitimate and valid contradiction as the starting point. This is the height of sophistry. Now this Hegelian replied, he says, Hegel's beginning is not about propositional logic between identities. It is the logic of identity itself. So you can't put two separate identities against each other yet before knowing what the identity is. My reply to him was, this is pure authoritarian irrationality. This is precisely why orthodox Hegelian reading is so dangerous. Sorry for you, but the laws of logic always apply, even if you don't want them to, so you can smuggle in your loaded premises. Hegel abides by them from the beginning and never departs from them because he can't. No one can. Of course, this person wants to be able to dismiss logic from the outset because they're trying to put forward a philosophical theology. They want to be able to dismiss it because if it remains, if it abides, it shatters these fallacious, irrational attempts to construct a system of contradiction. Now, what we see here in this authoritarianism is this crazy, tyrannical proclamation. You can't put two separate identities against each other. Wait a second. This person, this Hegelian, is now telling us that we do not have the right to hold Hegel or this person accountable to the laws of logic, that they magically are outside of these laws because according to their narrative, not their logic, they are dealing with something that is much more fundamental than the laws of logic, except the only problem with this is there is nothing more fundamental than the laws of logic. To even speak is to use those laws, because we are making statements based on identities, based on meanings that are not taken to be their opposites. Opposite does not mean nothing, does not mean everything, does not mean apple, does not mean tree. When I use it, it has a definitive identity. That identity is not negated simply because I don't want to abide by the laws of logic. But the way that this person proceeds to attack logic in this authoritarian way, this is the way that all modern sophistry proceeds against logic. It's not doing logic. It can't do logic because it is broken by the logic. The logic refutes it, it shatters it, it destroys it. So instead, it tries to dismiss the logic, as this cult Hegelian did here. You can't put two separate identities against each other. Well, this statement itself doesn't even mean anything unless the laws of logic hold. This statement itself validates the laws of logic. In order for this statement to be true, the laws of logic would have to hold. So this statement is itself just a statement of ignorance that is made in self-refutation. It's a self-refuting position. So we see these modern sophists everywhere in postmodernism, everywhere in philosophy, trying to substitute the act of doing logic with narratives of logic, trying to dismiss logic through authoritarian tactics like this. Many people fall for this. I think a great majority of people would actually fall for this. The people that read this in this particular forum are probably going to think that this person is being rational, that this person is stating something that's deep or profound. But this person is neither deep or profound. This person is ignorant. And that is how all of modern sophistry functions. That is how all of modern sophistry is. It is ignorant. It tries to present itself as being deep and profound. And when logic refutes it and shows how contradictory it is, how full of fallacy it is, modern sophistry tries to exempt or attack the logic, because the logic holds it to account. The logic exposes its rhetorical tactics. So this process, this narrative structure that we are confronted with in our time. In Hegelianism, we have a cult. Learn something from this. We think that it is only religion that is theological, that is irrational. It is only, but philosophy is also religious. We have a manifestation of it here in the example that I gave. Hegelianism, when it becomes uncritical, and most of it is uncritical, operates and functions like a theology. It's not interested in logic, it's only interested in its narrative, and many philosophies function this way. They don't care about evidence, they care about their narrative. They don't care about reason, they care about their narrative. They're not doing logic, they're not doing reason, they're talking about logic or talking about reason without doing it. That is not profound, that is not rational, that is not skilled in thinking, that is incompetent in thinking. But this is the form that we find in our society today. So something we should note, it is not just religion that occupies a space of superstition, but philosophy can very quickly and easily occupy a space of superstition. When it stops being critical, when it becomes, just like religion is a position that is based on a narrative. It is not based on reasoning, it is not based on evidence. When philosophy begins to function like this, when philosophy becomes based on a narrative instead of reason, instead of evidence, it begins to function like a theology. And when it functions like a theology, it becomes dangerous like a theology. Because when people become drawn into it, integrated into it, captured by it, they lose their ability to think critically, to think rationally. But these laws of logic, upon which everything is based, that nothing can refute, that nobody can exempt themselves from ever without shattering their own position. Notice how we can wield these laws against this sophistry. In this particular case that I exemplified here, this individual tried to make an authoritarian assertion and just declare that I did not have the right to use logic to evaluate the statements that Hegel was making, or to evaluate the statements that he is making, because his narrative is that his philosophy is deeper than those laws, more authoritative, more powerful, but it's not shown this. It doesn't show this at all. It asserts this as an authoritarian narrative, just like theology. Now, if philosophy can demonstrate this, if a position can manifest this without falling into the error of the performative contradiction that this individual falls into here, that Hegel falls into in the process of trying to attack the laws of logic, then they can establish a ground or a justification for their position. But it's very unlikely this is ever going to happen insofar as any position that is attacking these laws is itself utilizing these laws to make its attack and to make all of its claims intelligible. At the end of the day, if an individual like this, who is involved in a philosophical cult, he's involved in a philosophical theology, if an individual like this even manages to make their point, the conclusion would still be, you want us to accept that your point is equal to itself, correct? It is not the opposite of what you said. It is what you said. And the second that is validated, once again, the laws of logic are validated. The laws are so powerful that all you have to do is open up your mouth to attack them, and you validate them and affirm them. That is how authoritative they are in their actual philosophical and discourse function. There is no way to get past them. And we should use them, and we should rely on them to protect us from authoritarianism, like I exemplified and manifested here, and irrationalism and mysticism, like I exemplified here, that claims to be deeper than these laws, that claims to transcend evidence, that claims to transcend reason. People get captured by these narratives, and when they do, their rationality becomes bankrupt, and they lose their ability to approach the world critically.